The ninth time my husband called me an idiot in French, right in front of his first love, I simply tilted my head, smiled, and walked away. Because what he didn't know was that everything I had prepared would be something he would never forget. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from, so don't hesitate to leave a comment below. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more powerful stories of reckoning, awakening, and rebirth. Thank you for listening. Ms. Vaughn, our company is truly honored to have you join us. Sophie Laurent's voice came through the phone, excited as if she had just landed a multi-million-dollar deal. May I ask when you plan to start working? I stood in my Brooklyn apartment, the streetlights streaming through the window and glinting off the wedding ring on my left hand. I turned the ring slightly, an old habit I'd had for 5 years. After a brief pause, I answered firmly, "Within 2 weeks, I'll be on the flight." Then I hung up. Soft footsteps sounded behind me. James Sullivan, my husband, leaned against the living room doorway, his brows furrowed, his eyes sharp, as though he had just heard something unbelievable. "Where are you planning to go?" he asked, voice low, laced with suspicion and irritation. I glanced at him calmly. "Abroad." He laughed, the sound cold and cutting. "Liam, do you really have to be this dramatic? Yesterday was just our 5th anniversary. So what if I brought Chloe along? Are you seriously using this whole going abroad thing to threaten me?" I said nothing, just looked at him. James's blue eyes, still bright, still striking like the day I met him in Manhattan, now only felt foreign. They no longer made my heart tremble. Yesterday, at La Lumiere, under dim candlelight and the soft clinking of wine glasses, I had listened and understood every single word of the French conversation between James and Chloe Bennett. "You don't understand," James said, voice low but full of discontent. "She spends her days cooking, cleaning, not a single interesting story to tell. When I want to talk about poetry or art, she has no idea what romance even means," he continued, swirling his glass of red wine, his gaze fixed on Chloe as if she were the only person in the world who truly understood him. Chloe covered her mouth, giggling sweetly. "So, if I hadn't gone abroad that year, would you have chosen me, James?" I stopped cutting my steak. The knife in my hand froze mid-air. James fell silent for a second, then nodded, his expression so sincere it made my chest tighten. "I definitely would have chosen you." 5 years ago, in a small church in Hudson Valley, James had held my hands and told me I was the light that guides his life. And I believed him. I believed our love was strong enough to withstand anything. But now, looking at him in the white shirt I had ironed that very morning, I realized that light had gone out long ago. The old me might have screamed, demanded answers, or at least thrown a glass of wine in Chloe's face right there in the restaurant. But this time, I simply cut the last piece of steak, chewed slowly, swallowed, then stood up. "You two can take your time talking," I said softly. "I'll head home first." Chloe instantly feigned concern, springing to her feet, her hand reaching toward me. "Liam, James and I were just talking about work. Don't misunderstand." I didn't bother to look back. I just walked straight out. Behind me, James's voice sharpened with that familiar irritation. "Don't mind her. She's crazy." The only one who followed was the young waitress, eyes shimmering with worry. She hesitated, hands twisting together, as if fighting with herself. "Ma'am, I think there's something you should know." I smiled faintly, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Thank you." I understood everything. The look in her eyes, kind yet quietly sorrowful, was like a mirror reflecting my own emotions. It wasn't just pain, it was a deep, wordless grief, as if the whole world had known my secret long before I did. And this marriage, it was finally time to end it. The Brooklyn apartment was steeped in heavy silence, with only the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the window, casting shadows across James's tense face. He paced the living room, his voice rising higher than usual in frustration. I sat on the sofa, holding a glass of cold water, taking a small sip as the coolness slid down my throat, soothing the remnants of anger inside me. Seeing that I wasn't crying or arguing like before, James stopped. His brows eased, and his tone softened, shifting from accuser to mediator. He sat down beside me, his hand resting awkwardly on my shoulder. "Liam," he murmured, eyes studying my expression. "Listen to me. I'm planning to bring Chloe into the company, to take over your current position. She studied abroad. She's outstanding. She'll definitely do better than you. If you still want to work, you can become her consultant. Help her out a bit. If not, then just relax. Take time to take care of yourself." He watched me closely, those blue eyes gleaming, as if waiting for me to explode. But inside, a strange lightness spread through me, like a burden being lifted. I had been trying to find the right time to resign, and here the opportunity presented itself perfectly. Without hesitation, I nodded, my tone calm, as though agreeing to something trivial. "All right, I'll quit." James blinked, his face shifting between surprise and disbelief, as if he thought I was just being impulsive. He forced a smile, patting my knee lightly, his voice turning to shallow comfort. "You're mad at me, aren't you? Come on, I only did this for your own good. Most women would kill to have time for themselves. How about this? Let me take you on a trip. We'll fly somewhere, to the beach maybe, just to unwind." I shook my head firmly, my voice unwavering. "No need." He went quiet, stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the bustling street below, his back slightly hunched, as if my refusal had bruised his pride. In that moment, memories flooded back like an old, faded film, soft, distant, but full of feeling. James and I met in high school, in a small town where narrow streets and old wooden houses had witnessed our poor but innocent childhoods. We both worked part-time at a fast food restaurant, our clothes soaked in the smell of grease, our hands rough from endless scrubbing. Yet we laughed together through every tiring shift. James used to blink at me with that naive earnestness, his voice full of promise. "Wait for me, Liam. When I grow up, we'll build a life together. I'll be good to you forever." That promise, back then, was as sweet as caramel melting on my tongue. It made my heart flutter. But forever turned out to be a road far too long, far too uneven. And words said in the heat of youth were far too light. James didn't keep his promise. In college, he changed. The glamour of the city dazzled him, and he became infatuated with Chloe Bennett, the French major's beauty queen, radiant and proud, with golden hair and a smile that lit up every room. The moment he started taking French classes just to impress her, his voice excitedly talking about his lessons, I should have known. I should have realized his eyes no longer looked at me the same way. But at the time, Chloe, so bright, so untouchable, barely noticed him. She followed a rich heir abroad, leaving James behind with bitter disappointment. And now, after all these years, when James had finally built success, a company, and a full bank account, Chloe came back, and he welcomed her like some long-awaited prize. And me, the girl who once shone like sunlight, with a bright smile and wild dreams, was now just a faint shadow, dimmed by the glow of Chloe Bennett's perfection. The next morning, I drove to the office. As I walked into the building, every pair of eyes seemed to turn toward me, not with the usual warmth, but with curiosity and a faint sense of pity. They whispered among themselves, their voices barely audible, drifting into my ears like passing wind. "What happened to Liam? Why did she quit?" I walked down the hallway, the fluorescent lights above casting a cold, clinical glow on my face, like the lighting in a hospital corridor. Linda, a longtime colleague, who used to share afternoon tea with me during breaks, hurried over and pulled me into the corner near the coffee machine. Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if afraid someone might overhear. Liam, this morning Mr. Sullivan brought a woman into your office. The moment they arrived, he told the staff to clear out all your things. What's going on? I nodded, gently patting her hand. Thank you, Linda. I already know my voice was calm, but inside me, a quiet storm was rising. Not of anger, but of cold, measured clarity, the kind that comes when someone is finally ready to let go. When I stepped into the office, the first thing I saw was that every trace of my belongings had been removed. In the trash bin, even our wedding photo had been thrown away. Chloe Bennett was leaning against my desk, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders, red lips curved into a triumphant smile. She wore a fitted emerald green office dress, her posture confident, as if she were already stepping into her new role. Sorry, Ms. Vaughn, she said sweetly, her tone sharp as a blade. James insisted I move in early. He had people come in this morning to get everything ready. She bent down and looked into the trash bin, pretending to be surprised, her eyebrows lifting theatrically. Oh, who could have been so careless to toss your wedding photo with James in here? Then she reached in, picked up the photo, and held it out to me. I took it, running my fingers along the wooden frame, feeling the small scratch in the corner. The same one I'd made accidentally 3 years ago when we moved. Without hesitation, I slid the photo out of its frame. The soft sound of paper tearing broke the silence. I ripped it into pieces, the fragments fluttering to the floor like dried petals, my eyes never leaving Chloe. When something's dirty, there's no need to pick it back up. Behind me, James's voice burst out, shocked, urgent. Liam, what are you doing? He rushed forward, almost stumbling, dropping to his knees to gather the torn pieces, his trembling hands trying to fit them back together, as if the past could still be repaired. But the crumpled scraps lay lifeless in his palms, empty, just like the love between us, long beyond repair. Watching him kneel there, I remembered the early days. When we first married, we were broke. James had just started his business, and our bank account was always in the red. I once told him, we don't need to take wedding photos yet. We can do it when we have more money. But he insisted, his eyes shining with determination. To afford that photo shoot, James stayed up 10 nights straight, taking on extra jobs just to save a little over $1,000. The photos weren't expensive, but to us back then, they were everything. I used to cherish that picture, kept it on my desk, looked at it every morning to remind myself how we had started from nothing together. Now, looking at him trying to piece the fragments together, I noticed his tie, a sleek Hermes, probably worth more than the entire photo shoot ever was. And in that moment, I realized it was those memories, those small moments I once thought eternal, that had blinded me. Even knowing he had once loved Chloe, even knowing he had broken his promises, I still walked into this marriage, believing love could mend every crack. But the truth is, once something's cracked, you have to learn to let it go early. I didn't bother paying attention to his outburst. Casually, I pulled a stack of papers from my bag. These are my resignation documents. Sign them, James looked up, his usually sharp blue eyes now flickering with rare confusion. He took the papers, fingers brushing over the pages, his voice lowering, almost pleading. If you don't want to quit, we can talk about it. I'll find another position for Chloe. Beside him, Chloe Bennett flustered. Her golden hair slightly tousled as she leaned closer, clutching James's sleeve like a child afraid of losing her toy. James! She cried, her wide eyes shimmering with deliberate helplessness, desperate to hold on to what she thought was hers. Strangely this time, James didn't look at her. His gaze stayed locked on me, waiting, as if hoping I'd break down, or at least give him a chance to fix things. But I only smiled faintly, a thin, cold curve on my lips, my tone just as calm as the night before. No need. I've done enough. James clenched his jaw, the muscle twitching visibly along his cheek. The silence between us grew heavy, thick, like the air before a storm. Then, he slammed his hand against the desk. "Fine!" he snapped, eyes flashing with anger. "You said it yourself! Don't regret it later!" He flipped through the papers, ready to read, but Chloe suddenly winced, clutching her stomach, her voice weak and trembling. "James, my stomach hurts. Just sign it and take me to the hospital." James blinked, confusion flickering briefly across his face. Without hesitation, he grabbed a pen and scrawled his signature across the page, then stood up, almost lifting Chloe in his arms as he rushed out of the office. I looked down at the papers on the desk, exhaling a quiet breath of relief. James would never know that the moment my resignation was approved, my lawyer would send him the divorce papers. I left the company, holding the folder, and drove home. The apartment that was once a home now felt hollow and cold. I opened the door. The late afternoon light slipped through the curtains, painting pale gold streaks across the wooden floor. One by one, I went through every item that belonged to me. What could be taken, I packed. What couldn't, I discarded. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and pulled out a small wooden box that held what used to be my treasures. When I was 15, I had folded 1,000 paper stars in 2 weeks, my fingers aching, just to give them to James for his birthday. When I was 18, he wrote me a love letter, messy handwriting, but sincere. There was also the wedding ring, the one he'd saved all year to buy, proposing to me under the oak tree in our hometown park. Each of those things had once been precious, but now, with love gone, they were nothing more than pitiful, worthless trinkets. I dumped them into a trash bag, erasing every trace of James and me from that apartment, piece by piece. James came home around 8 that night, pushing the door open, looking exhausted. He stopped in the living room, frowning as he noticed how bare the place looked. The photo frames gone, the rug I'd chosen missing, even the lamp I loved had disappeared. He turned, spotting me by the door, packing the last of my luggage. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone casual, but there was suspicion in his eyes. I shrugged, making up a reason, my voice light as if I were talking about the weather. Too much clutter. "I'm just cleaning up." James walked to the closet, opened it, his brows tightening when he saw only his clothes left inside. "Then where are yours?" he asked, surprise laced with irritation. I smiled faintly, meeting his gaze, cold, but not bitter. "They're old." I threw them away. "I'll buy new ones," James scoffed, crossing his arms as he leaned against the wall. "You sure know how to spend my money." "Fine, buy whatever you want." He paused for a second, then added, in a tone that sounded like some grand favor, "Oh, I'm free tomorrow. I'll take you back to our old school." I nodded, lips curling slightly, not out of joy, but with a strange calmness, as if this was the final act of playing the obedient wife. All right. After all, we'd known each other since high school. Those naive days in a small town, where dreams were simple and love was pure. Even if this was the end, I still wanted a proper goodbye. Not for him, but for myself. For the girl who once believed in James's promise of forever. Saturday morning, I wore a dark blue knit dress that fit just right, soft flat shoes, and tied my hair up neatly. A version of myself I hadn't seen in years. For so long, I'd been buried in work, managing every detail of James's life, never once pausing to take care of my own. I looked closely at the woman in the mirror. The face was still mine, but the eyes had fine lines, and my hair no longer shone the way it did when I was young. Compared to the girl in my memories, I'd aged a lot. No wonder James once called me an unattractive woman who doesn't know how to take care of herself. Outside in the living room, James was already ready, dressed in a perfectly pressed gray suit. A silk blue tie knotted precisely. He stood before the mirror, adjusting his collar, his eyes flicking toward me with a brief flash of surprise. But he said nothing. We had a quiet breakfast, the silence broken only by the sound of cutlery clinking against plates. Then we left the house together and got into his car. On the way to our old high school, the air in the car felt oddly light. We talked, our voices calm and distant, like two old friends reminiscing. James mentioned our high school days, how we used to skip class to get ice cream on the corner, or the early years of his startup when we had nothing but hope. Halfway there, his phone buzzed, cutting through the fragile calm. I glanced at the screen. The name was clear. Chloe. Chloe Bennett. He answered, his voice dropping low, murmuring a few brief words before hanging up. Then he pulled the car to the side of the road, his expression uneasy, his eyes avoiding mine. Liam, something urgent came up at work. I have to take care of it right now. I didn't call out his lie. I simply opened the door and stepped out. Through the car window, I looked straight into his eyes and said quietly, slowly, "Goodbye." James blinked, his lips parting as if to say something, but I had already turned away. In my mind, one final sentence echoed, left unspoken. James, from now on, we'll never meet again. I called a taxi and went alone to our old high school. Sister Mary, our former teacher, was waiting for me in her small office. Her hair was now snow white, her thin hands trembling slightly as she clasped mine. "Liam, how have you been?" she asked softly, her gentle eyes filled with concern. "Why didn't James come?" I smiled, unwilling to tell her the truth. "He's busy with work." Couldn't get away, Sister Mary sighed, her faded eyes gazing out the window toward the schoolyard, where the oak trees still stood tall. I always felt James isn't the same anymore. Back then, no matter how busy he was, he'd still make time to see you. How did it come to this? I smiled again, without answering, just holding her hand a little tighter. Deep down, I knew she was right. The James she remembered, the awkward boy who once gave me a handful of wildflowers he picked behind the school, was long gone. When I returned to the apartment, I placed the signed divorce papers on the dining table, my signature steady and final on the white sheet. The rest my lawyer would take care of. Before boarding my flight, I took out my phone and sent James one last message. In French, the language he once learned for Chloe, the language he used to mock me with in that restaurant. I even added a little line at the end, a petty touch I allowed myself. "Guess who the real fool is now?" Then I blocked every contact, changed my number. The apartment, the company, James, they were all just fading memories now. From this moment on, he and I would never meet again. ACT-6. The plane touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, the roar of the engines fading into the rhythmic echo of French announcements over the speakers. I stepped off the plane, suitcase trailing behind me, and the crisp Paris air rushed in. After passing through customs, I scanned the arrivals hall, and then I saw him. A tall Frenchman with neatly trimmed dark brown hair and deep blue eyes like the ocean, clear, calm, and luminous under the airport lights. He smiled politely, stepping forward to take my luggage. Speaking fluent English, with a warm tone and a trace of that charming French accent, he said, "Bonjour, Ms. Vaughn. I've been sent by headquarters to pick you up. You can call me Etienne." I smiled, shaking his hand, feeling the warmth and steadiness of his grip. Then I replied smoothly in French, "You can speak French with me." "I understand it." His eyes widened slightly in surprise, his brows lifting before he chuckled softly, the sound echoing lightly through the terminal. "Your French is impressive," he said. I smiled faintly, my gaze brushing over his face, and for a moment I thought back to my own journey with the language. I had learned French out of sheer determination, because James had used it again and again to speak with Chloe Bennett right in front of me. I used to ask what they were talking about, my voice light but uneasy, and he'd always brush it off. Just work matters. But what kind of work made people smile that brightly? The way James looked at Chloe, his eyes lit up, full of energy, was nothing like the weary indifference he showed me. Back then, no matter how busy I was, I spent at least an hour every day learning French, sitting in front of my laptop, headphones on, repeating vocabulary, my fingers typing grammar exercises late into the night. Even during breaks, I watched French films, hoping that one day when they spoke, I would understand, maybe even join the conversation. But when I finally became fluent enough to catch every word, the first thing I heard from James was, Liam Vaughn is such an idiot. Sooner or later, I'll divorce her. In that moment, I saw him for who he truly was. And strangely, instead of heartbreak, I felt calm. Perhaps because deep down, I had always known the truth. From then on, no matter how many times they mocked me in French, I never flinched. My face stayed composed, my expression unreadable, as if I hadn't understood a single word. I no longer wasted my energy on James. Instead, I redirected it, methodically taking control of every key client the company had. Late night phone calls, detailed emails, quiet meetings. I built relationships, gathered information, and turned myself into the center of a network in the renewable energy field. That was the real reason the French corporation had offered me this job, with double the salary and a higher position, because those clients were now loyal to me, and my years of experience had value they couldn't ignore. James had always mocked me as stupid, his voice dripping with disdain during every argument. But the real fool was him. While he and Chloe basked in their self-made fantasy, the company's market share quietly slipped away. Major contracts shifted to competitors, quarterly revenue declined, and he was too distracted to notice. I could almost picture him now, discovering the fallout, barking orders, panicking, trying to make sense of a collapse he never saw coming. Paris unfolded before me like the opening of a new chapter, Etienne's laughter echoing softly as he drove, and the Eiffel Tower shimmered in the fading light of the sunset. A CT7. At the same time, back in Brooklyn, James was facing a problem far worse than the headache of lost contracts. After I left, the senior employees, the ones who had stood by both of us since the early days of the company, started resigning one after another. The company began to shake. The whispers in the hallways grew louder. With dark circles under his eyes, James paced through the office, phone in hand, making call after call, desperately trying to keep people from leaving. But it was useless. Sometimes I still logged into my old Instagram. The screen lit up with flashing notifications. Former colleagues had sent me warm messages. Congrats on your happy divorce, Liam. Your new life will be so much better. Or, you deserve better. Hope we get to work together again someday. I read each message slowly, my fingers brushing across the screen before replying sincerely. Each word felt like a soft breeze, clearing away what bitterness still lingered. But what I received most were messages from James. From the moment he realized I was gone, he texted every day, nonstop. At first, they were accusations. Why didn't you tell me you spoke French? How long have you been hiding that from me? Then came the repeated apologies. I was wrong, Liam. I regret everything. Please forgive me, he'd reminisce, pleading through his words. Remember when we met in school? I promised I'd stay with you forever. How can you just walk away like that? How can you say divorce and mean it? I read those messages while sitting on the sofa in my new Paris apartment, feeling only a dull sting of irony. He was the one who cheated, who mocked me in front of others, and now he was the one demanding answers? I didn't reply. I simply deleted each message, one by one, watching the words disappear as if they had never existed. They only made me clearer, stronger, more certain that my decision had been right. I poured everything into my work, and life in Paris moved quickly, like a film played in fast forward. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed. During those 3 years, I worked my way up. From department manager at headquarters to regional director. Every bit of progress came from effort only I truly understood. Nights up until 2 a.m., analyzing data, presentations before executives, where my voice stayed steady and firm. In those 3 years, I didn't fall in love. Not because I hadn't moved on from James. His name was nothing more than a faint shadow now, but because I simply didn't need to. Men were never in short supply. There were surprise bouquets left on my desk, admiring glances during conferences, and even Etienne, the Frenchman with blue eyes who had once picked me up at the airport. One rainy evening in Paris, under the soft glow of streetlights, he confessed his feelings. The next second, he pulled me close, his arm around my waist, kissing me, a deep, practiced kiss that made my heart race. To be fair, he was very good. So good, I didn't want anyone else. When I eventually returned home, he insisted on coming too, smiling, suitcase in hand, saying, "I can go anywhere as long as it's with you." Over the years, I had turned myself into someone strong, from the woman who once cried quietly in a bathroom, to a confident leader standing on stage before hundreds. I learned the only person a woman can rely on is herself. When you truly shine in your own world, love and success will find their way to you naturally. What I didn't expect was that the first person I'd see upon returning would be James. Somehow, he'd found out I was coming back. The moment I stepped into the arrivals hall, there he was, standing among the crowd, holding a bouquet of deep red roses. When he saw me, he waved high, shouting across the terminal, "Vaughn!" I followed the sound of his voice. Compared to 3 years ago, James looked much older. The hollows under his eyes, deep like cracks in dry earth, wrinkles around the corners, even a few strands of gray visible from afar. While he was visibly shaken, I felt nothing but calm. My steps were steady, unhurried. I didn't avoid him. I had no reason to. I wasn't the one who did wrong. I stopped in front of him, my tone cold. "James, long time no see." My indifference seemed to unsettle him. He shifted his weight, his eyes darting nervously. His voice trembled as he almost pleaded, "Liam, these 3 years, I've thought about everything. I finally understand how wrong I was. Please, can you forgive me?" I nodded slightly, lips pressed together. "Your apology, I accept. Anything else?" "Then, can you come back to me?" he asked, stepping forward, reaching out, his fingers trembling slightly. But I pulled back, my voice sharp with warning. "James, we're divorced." His face fell completely, eyes wide, mouth open, but no words came. Out, I rolled my suitcase past him. Etienne followed close behind, leaning in to whisper softly in French near my ear. "Honey, who's that?" I laughed, answering in French as well. "Just an idiot." I admit, in some things, I'm still a little petty. Over the years, through mutual friends, I still occasionally heard bits of news about James. After I left, he went through a breakdown, obsessively searching for any trace of me, calling old friends, scouring social media, pretending it was love, but I knew it was just panic from losing control. Later, when he found out I had moved to Paris, he even booked a flight there, staying for a month, hoping to accidentally run into me. During that month, Chloe realized she could no longer hold his heart. She started falsifying records and quietly transferring money from his accounts. In just a few short weeks, she moved $10 million, small amounts at a time, but together forming a massive sum, vanishing into offshore accounts. By the time James discovered it and returned home, Chloe had completed everything and fled abroad, leaving him buried in chaos. His company soon collapsed. That's why I knew. His apology wasn't born from guilt or remorse. It was born from desperation, because out of all his remaining options, I was simply the best one left. I didn't expect that night to see my name trending online. The hashtag on Twitter was clear as day: Liam Vaughn scandal. Explosive. Female CEO worth hundreds of millions accused of fraud. Leaked messages between director and colleague. The comments included screenshots of my messages, casual work exchanges twisted into fake evidence of misconduct, and a photo of Etienne and me embracing in a hotel. I scrolled through a few comments, the screen flicking by at dizzying speed. "Massive fraud," one wrote, with a flame emoji. "Sis, your life is literally my dream." Another commented with hearts. That French guy is gorgeous. Those blue eyes, straight through my soul. Someone fangirled, adding a broken heart gif. Seriously, do people have no shame? Manipulating data like that, disgraceful? A furious comment read, paired with an angry emoji. Before I could finish scrolling, my phone lit up with a call, an unknown number, yet familiar. The moment I answered, James's voice came through, a mix of concern and calculation. Vaughn, are you all right? Just that, and I knew exactly where this scandal came from. The same stench of manipulation I'd smelled before. I didn't waste time. My voice was cold, cutting. Was it you who leaked this? Silence on the other end. Heavy, guilty silence. I let out a sharp laugh, the sound echoing through the quiet room. Well done, James. He rushed to explain, words stumbling over each other. Vaughn, listen to me. If you agree to come back, I'll make the paparazzi take it down immediately. I'll issue a statement myself. Make sure your career isn't affected. In that moment, I realized he had sunk even lower, using scandal as leverage for affection. My reply was razor sharp. Is that all? It's the 21st century, James. And everything I've built, I earned with my own work and connections. You really think a scandal like this could scare me? I hung up, the dead tone ringing like a final full stop. The post didn't last long. The blogger deleted it, erasing every trace. The French headquarters quietly stepped in, pressuring the platforms until the whole thing disappeared as quickly as it came. Just a passing gust of wind. James went silent after that. No messages, no calls. Just a long, hollow quiet that must have echoed inside him. It wasn't until 2.5 years later that Chloe Bennett was finally caught, after burning through nearly all the stolen money on luxury vacations, designer bags, and indulgent living. Only a small fraction, barely a few $100,000, was recovered, not nearly enough to save the company that had already fallen apart. In the end, Chloe was sentenced to 7 years in prison. At the end of the trial, James lunged toward her, shouting in anger, voice cracking, "Why? Why did you do this to me? What did I ever do to you?" Chloe laughed coldly, the sharp sound slicing through the silent courtroom. James, you still have the nerve to ask? Liam Vaughn sacrificed everything for you, and you stood right in front of her, mocking her in a language she didn't understand. You really think someone like you could ever be loved? From the start, all I wanted was your money. Her words tore off the last mask James had left. He stood there, pale, trembling, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. He broke down, turning toward me, stammering, "Liam, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. I just turned to leave. At that moment, Chloe looked at me, her voice sharp with resentment, her eyes burning. "Liam Vaughn, you must be so proud of yourself now, huh?" I looked back, smiling, thin, calm, but cutting. "This ending, Chloe, it's exactly what you earned." I stepped out of the courtroom, the heavy wooden doors closing behind me like the ending of a long, turbulent chapter. Outside, sunlight filtered through the trees, scattering bright golden patches across the pavement, pieces of freedom glimmering under the sky. Toward James and Chloe, I felt nothing anymore. No anger, no resentment, not even pity. Only a calm lightness, as if a soft breeze had passed, carrying away the ashes of everything that used to be. I stopped by a park bench near the courthouse and sat down, placing my handbag beside me. The chirping of birds on the branches mingled with the faint hum of distant traffic, creating an ordinary, peaceful melody. I unlocked my phone, scrolling through Instagram, messages from friends and former colleagues still arriving, filled with warmth and celebration. "Liam, you're such an inspiration." And "wishing you freedom and light." I smiled, typing short words of thanks before locking the screen again, letting the warm sunlight touch my face. Life, like drifting clouds, moves and changes endlessly. Maybe fate had arranged it all long ago. The nights I cried quietly in a dark apartment. The evenings I stayed up late studying French until my eyes ached. the steady footsteps I took when walking away from James. Their ending. James with his hollow face, Chloe with her bitter glare in the courtroom, had nothing to do with me anymore. They had written their own fate, and I had chosen mine, the path where the light belongs to me. In the past 3 years, I learned how to let go, not by erasing the memories, but by allowing them to pass quietly. I was once the trembling girl clutching her wedding ring, trying to hold together a love that had already shattered. But now I am Liam Vaughn, the regional president of a renewable energy corporation, a woman standing firmly on her own 2 feet, with a confident smile and a free heart. Today, I didn't just walk away from James and Chloe. I walked away from my former self, the girl who once doubted her worth, who once lived in fear. I have healed piece by piece, through long nights of hard work, through laughter shared with new colleagues, through evenings spent stargazing from a Paris balcony. Etienne texted me, his words carrying that same soft French charm. "Honey, what should we eat tonight?" "Let me cook for you." I smiled, typing back. "Whatever you want, as long as there's wine." I'm not in a hurry to love again, nor to find a new place to belong. Love, when it comes, will come like sunlight, naturally and gently. For now, I'm content to live freely, to be myself again, no longer bound by false promises or the judgmental eyes of anyone else. I know there will still be challenges ahead, but I'm not afraid, because I've learned that no matter how fate is written, I can always write my own story.